Hi, this is Dave Smith, and you're listening to my interview with Elaine Goodman on Gogoodman.com.au.
Now, on the line, as I promised, an interview I'm very, very excited about. I've been pumped for this all week. Dave Smith, the sports god. Welcome to the Elaine Gogoodman Show on 88.3 Southern FM.
Elaine, my pleasure to be on. I always love talking to the people down under in Oz. A great place to visit.
Now, let's start with the sports god. Where did that name originate from?
Well, you know, when I was first getting started in radio back in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, with a name like Dave Smith, that's going to hold you back in radio. That sounds like a pen name. That name is really common. So I thought I might need a moniker or to change my name or something. And, you know, I was really good at answering trivia questions. And, you know, I was an athlete in my younger days back in college. And we were sitting around one night playing a drinking game, of course, and doing sports trivia questions. And one of the guys in the room looked at me and said, "Man, you are a sports god. We can't stump you." So I said, "That's it. That's it. I think that'll be the moniker from now on."
So at least you didn't give yourself that name.
Yeah.
Now, you said you were an athlete growing up. What sports were you into?
I played American football, baseball, and basketball. And basketball was my favorite sport and what I was best at. And I was a left-handed pitcher. You know, looking back on it now, Elaine, I should have really pursued baseball because I'm left-handed. And left-handed pitchers get to the major leagues really fast. They're in short supply, and everybody's looking for left-handed pitchers. So I was a fool thinking, you know, maybe a short white guy like myself could make a living at basketball. I should have gone for the left-handed pitching thing.
How tall are you? Would you have got into basketball if you tried?
I'm only 6'1". I know that's the same size.
Oh, only.
Yeah, but I was 2 steps slow, and you know, there was no chance of being a basketball player. But you know, I was a pretty decent pitcher, but I didn't pursue it the way I should have.
So when do you think you caught the radio bug? Where do you think you caught it from, and when?
You know, that's a good question because I didn't take broadcast courses in college. I never went to radio school, technical school, or anything like that, and it was just, you know, I was a high school and college athlete, and then, you know, I was a school teacher for a long time. I was an elementary school PE and Spanish and English teacher, and I was a coach of the teams, and I used to listen to sports talk radio here in the States, and, you know, back in the late 80s, early 90s, Elaine, sports talk radio was just exploding in the U.S., and, you know, now we have hundreds and hundreds of stations, but it was just starting to take off back then, and, you know, I would be in Los Angeles, and I'd listen to the sports talk shows all day long, and I'd say, these guys are horrible. I mean, they're making mistakes. They're getting players' names wrong. They're getting facts wrong. They don't understand the game. They're boring. They just talk about statistics all the time. And I used to say to myself, I could go on the air right now with no experience and be better than these guys. And people were telling me, yeah, you ought to give it a try. So, you know, I basically looked around, and I got a job as an intern, and I worked for free for 2 years, you know, bringing the host coffee and sweeping the floors and doing all that kind of thing. And then I decided, the light bulb kind of went on over my head, and I just looked around and found some sponsors and raised some money, and I put myself on the air, and I bought the airtime. So once I was on the air and I bought the time myself, then I got my tapes together and sent them out all over the country and just started pushing.
Now, that's weird. My next question is, what was your journey into radio? But buying time on air, that's not something that's common in Australia. Is that kind of an American thing?
Yeah, it's usually weekend and overnight radio. You can go to a station and you can just buy the time, which gets to be kind of expensive. So I did some research, and I looked around, and I found one station in L.A. that was pretty good frequency that allowed you to buy time. It's called brokered programming, where you can buy your own radio time. So I walked into the program director's office, and I said, hey, listen, I want to come on the air after Monday Night Football. I want to come on once a week from 10 o'clock at night till midnight. And I said, I don't want to BS you or, you know, tell you how great I am or anything. Let's just talk turkey here. How much? And the guy said, well, I can put you on for 6 months, 10 to midnight every night for $20,000. I said, all right, good. Well, now I know what I need to do. So then I was like 8 in the morning till midnight hustling sponsors and begging for money. And I came up with it and put myself on the air.
Gee, so did they give you any kind of training?
No, absolutely not. I was on my own. And Elaine, I'm certainly glad that the first couple of episodes of that show aren't available and weren't taped, because they were absolutely horrible. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to set up a guy. I just went on and started talking. But, you know, I listened to the tapes every night, and I learned and, you know, straightened it out. And my goal was, nobody had ever done a comedy-type sports talk show before, so I wanted to mix in jokes and non-sports topics and maybe some politics and some girl and sex talk and things like that, and mix it all into sports because everybody was too serious on the air. Nobody had any fun. So, and Elaine, when you go to a sports bar or if you're hanging out with your mates, what do you sit around and talk about at night? You don't talk about statistics, and you talk about girls, you talk about having fun, you talk about sports, and that's the way it should be when you're on the air.
Fair enough. And what about the panel? How did you teach yourself that?
The panel? Oh no, I still don't know how to do that. I've never done any tech stuff. I've never been trained. I've never worked a board. All I did was get on the air and do a show. I've been a radio sports talk show host from day one, and outside of a year and a half up in Portland, Oregon, I've been lucky. I've been able to stay home and never leave Los Angeles, which is, that's some bad. I was asked, about 2 or 3 years ago, to speak at a Women in Media conference. I was one of the guest speakers on the panel up there. These young people who are trying to break into radio, and it happened to be a Women in Media conference. And one of the questions was, what do you do, to get started? And I really ticked off a lot of people here, Elaine, because they have a big mouth. But I looked up at the front couple of rows, and it was all college professors and radio broadcast school types. And I said, well, my first piece of advice would be not to listen to anything any of these guys tell you in the first couple of rows, because everything they told me was wrong. They told me, well, you're going to have to move to a really small town in a small state somewhere in America, out in the plains or down south, and you get a job at a little tiny radio station, and you announce high school football, and hopefully, in 10 to 20 years, and you can work your way up to a major market. So that is absolutely the wrong advice. I said, just do what I did. Hire yourself. Go to a station, raise some money, put yourself on the air, and learn that way. And learn from your mistakes and hone your craft and do it while you're on the air.
See, that's the way they teach you in Australia, is to go out into the bush, as we call it, and start on community radio. That's what I'm doing here. Southern FM's a community radio station, so no, it's fun. You get your freedom on community radio. I don't know if there's such thing as community radio in America, but it's a good way to start.
And you're in Melbourne. You're lucky. You're in the big sports market in Australia. You're lucky. You didn't have to go into the bush and do a tiny little radio station in the middle of nowhere. You're doing it the right way.
Exactly. Now, were you always drawn to sports radio?
Yeah. When it first got started, I just said to myself, "This is for me. I can do this," because I thought all the hosts were just god awful. So, and I could do better than them immediately. So I always knew it was kind of in my blood. And and also, I'm kind of an idiot savant. That's how I describe myself. I'm not good at anything except sports talk radio. So every button-down job sitting behind a desk or in a cubicle I've ever had, I got fired within a week or two. So this is it. This is about the only thing I'm good at, doing sports talk radio. So this is what I have to do, and it's all I've ever wanted to do.
Do you remember who your first big interview was with?
Wow, first big interview. Big name. It was with John Elway, who is the Hall of Fame quarterback from the Denver Broncos, and he's now the president of the Denver Broncos, one of the great NFL players of all time. And, we didn't know any better back then. So I was doing the show, and I had a young guy who was my producer, and he just get back there and start calling around, hotel rooms and see if he could find anybody. You're supposed to go through the PR department, and go through proper channels, but we didn't know any of that. We were just getting started. So the Broncos happened to be playing a preseason game in Tokyo right then. So my producer found out the hotel in Tokyo where they were staying. They just started asking for players' rooms, and as luck would have it, John Elway was under his own name in his hotel room, and he happens to be from the San Fernando Valley out here in the Los Angeles area where I'm from. He's a local kid. So our producer got on the air with him, and he told him a bunch of lies and said, hey, this is the number one rated sports talk show in Los Angeles, everyone loves it. So Elway said, oh, what the hell, I'll do it. So I got a 20-minute interview with him. That was the first big name I ever got, and it was, by accident we did it all the wrong way, but, that's the way you got to do it. You got to hustle and do things like that.
So when did you figure out that the proper way is to go through the PR department and not to actually stalk them overseas?
Well, nobody cared because I was buying my own time back then, so nobody really cared. And then, but when I got hired and I got into regular radio, with a program director and a GM, and we were a flagship station, and we had the Dodgers and we had the Lakers, and we had USC football, college football on our station. So I had the same producer who went with me, and he started getting all kinds of guests, and we were putting them on every night. Then the teams just started raising hell. They would call it, what are you doing? You can't just call these guys at home. And call them in the hotel room. So, then we learned, the program director came in and said, no, you've got to go through the PR department and through the proper channels to get these guys, and they arranged it. So that's when I learned. I had no idea. I just told my producer, go get them, boys. Just any way you can do it, get them on the air.
Now, as you said, you've been mostly in LA, but you did spend a year and a half in Portland, and I listened to you after Portland Trailblazer games. I'm not a fan of the Portland Trailblazers, but I listened to you on that station, which shall not be named. Now, is it hard to...
You can say it, because I'm still on that station when I do my NBC Sports Radio show now.
750 the game.
One of our affiliates.
750 the game.
Yep.
Now, is it hard to move, I guess, states when you're supporting a group of teams in one state? Is it hard to go to another state and basically be forced to support the team in that state? Like, how do you stay loyal to your home team?
Well, it was kind of difficult because I'm a lifelong Lakers fan. Even obviously, growing up in Los Angeles, I'm a Lakers fan. So then I get hired in Portland to move up there, and it's just I don't know, Elaine, how much you know about Portland, but that's the only show in town. That's the only professional team they have up there, are the Blazers. They don't have a baseball team or a football team. So it is just, I've never seen anything like the support and the passion and the noise in that arena in Portland. I mean, it puts Staples Center in L.A. to shame. That's kind of like a tomb compared to the noise up in Portland. They are some serious fans. So, yeah, from day one, they hated me because I was a guy from L.A., and they hate the Lakers in Portland. They really hate the Lakers. It's a big rivalry. So it took me, a couple of months to win them over. And, my dad is from Portland, and my relatives are from Portland, and they were all Blazers fans and Oregon fans. So I had a little bit of that going for me. But, I won them over. Used a sense of humor and, and just gradually won them over when they saw that I was fair and that I actually liked the Trailblazers and, gave them time to talk on the air. And it's funny, you can't have a thin skin in this business. I'm sure you know that, Elaine. So when people, call in and call you an idiot and a moron and a jackass, if you laugh about it and let them talk, you kind of win them over that way.
That hasn't happened to me yet. but it's still early.
As you move up, it will happen. And if you're opinionated, if you have strong opinions, I guarantee you it will happen.
Now, well, did it help that you were pretty much throwing LaMarcus Aldridge under the bus every week when you were on the air in Portland? Did that help get you some support?
Did it help what? I'm sorry?
That you were throwing LaMarcus Aldridge under the bus every week.
Well, I didn't. I just wanted him to play better. LaMarcus Aldridge is soft, and he's a tremendous talent. He's 7 feet tall. He's a power forward with the Trailblazers, and he's a great scorer. I mean, he's 25 points a game. He has a tremendous shooting touch, and he's unbelievably talented, but he's soft. And I never hold back, so I go on the air and say, how in the world can a guy 7 feet tall, as talented as him, be averaging 6-7 rebounds a game? And he doesn't play any defense, and he doesn't rebound, and he doesn't like physical contact. He likes to stay out there on the perimeter and shoot jump shots. So I said, I want 25 points and 12 rebounds out of this guy, and I'm going to keep my foot up his rear end until I get those numbers on the postgame show. So, a lot of the callers agreed with me. They said, yeah, he is soft. So we want him to play better, too.
Now, being in sports radio, you'd mix with sports stars quite a bit, but is there one or two people that have left you speechless when you've met them? Kind of like, I know you're a boxing fan, have you met Muhammad Ali or Michael Jordan or anyone that's just blown your mind?
Well, you mean like who was the nicest guy I ever met, or who I was just so intimidated by?
Or just someone that's, I guess, left you speechless, that you've kind of stuttered to, like when you first spoke to them, you kind of stuttered a little bit. You know that feeling?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember one time I was in a restaurant one time and doing a live show before a Lakers game, and my producer said, hey, there's somebody eating in here who had just agreed to come on with you as a guest, and to surprise, and he wouldn't tell me who it was. And walked around the corner and sat down right in front of me, and it was Jimmy Connors, who was, I said, holy mackerel. I was like Ralph Cramden on the Honeymooners. I couldn't talk. I was just kind of, because he was a hero of mine when I was growing up. I was kind of speechless when he walked in the room. I didn't really know what to say. And the other one was Muhammad Ali. And this was, late 80s, early 90s, when he was still, pretty much coherent and he could talk. And I was in the same room with him, and I was just, I didn't know what to say. It was just, it was amazing being in the same room with him. So I would say those are probably the two where I was kind of speechless.
So Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Connors, that's a pretty good resume right there.
Yeah.
Now, we'll go to a couple of questions I've been sent in before we keep going with the questions I've got. I've got one from James, who is a good friend of mine, and he's been studying in Washington. He says, wondering if you could ask Dave Smith about the future of baseball and whether or not it is still America's pastime. And I guess whether or not he feels the market is oversaturated with so many teams and other sports to compete with. So what would you say to James?
Well, no, it is not America's pastime anymore, and it hasn't been for about 30 years. It was when I was, a little kid and way back in the day, but NFL football is now, without question, America's pastime. When you look at the television ratings and the interest and the attendance, NFL football is king when it comes to America, and college football is probably second now. So I'd say NFL football first, college football second, and then the NBA and baseball are probably tied after that. So no, definitely not America's pastime anymore. It's changing. It's a different generation now, Elaine. Baseball is a game, where you sit back. Baseball was popular in America when America was a different country. When people sat on their front porch, had lemonade at night and had long conversations, and the neighbors popped over, and when life was at a slower pace, the way baseball's played. But boy, now in this age of high tech and iPods and 6-second attention spans, baseball isn't anywhere near as popular as it used to be. And the quick highlights on the news, it's changed. And let's be honest about this. A lot of people don't like bringing this up, and the NFL hates it when I bring it up. But gambling is one of the huge reasons that NFL is America's pastime now, because everybody has a little bit of action on an NFL game, and gambling is the driving force, I think, behind a lot of the ratings.
And staying with baseball, gambling is also a big thing here, and they're trying to stamp it out a little bit, but it's never going to be stamped out completely. Des wants to know who you think will win the World Series.
Well, I picked the Red Sox before it started in 6 games, and last they won the first one, lost the second one last night. Now we got 3 in St. Louis, so it would behoove the Red Sox to win maybe 2 out of the 3, but 1 out of the 3 would bring it back home. So I just think the American League's a better league than the National League, and has better players and is deeper and have more good hitters in the lineup, probably because of the designated hitters. So I'm still going to stick with the Red Sox. So they gave one away last night, Elaine. I don't know what that manager was thinking. They're ahead in the 7th inning. They've got 1 out. They're ahead 2-1, and he takes John Lackey out, one of his best starting pitchers, and the bullpen comes in and blows the game. I don't get it. The Tigers did that against the Red Sox in the last series as well. Max Scherzer, who was the best pitcher in baseball this year, was removed twice with leads in the late innings, and both times the bullpen gave up grand slams. So I don't know. I don't know if that goes on a lot in the AFL down under, Elaine, but a lot of these managers try to be geniuses, and they cost their team games.
Yeah, it happens a lot where in the AFL where a player kicks a goal and they get dragged off straight away, and it's really annoying when they've got a bit of momentum and they just get pulled.
A lot of these managers and coaches are egomaniacs, and they have to think, they have to make some kind of genius move at the end of the game to put their stamp on it. That's what they think.
Mm. Now, a couple of questions from Maria. She says, the first couple are about violence in American sports. Do you think there's too much violence in American sports?
No, I think a lot of that is what drives it, especially in the NFL. It's a violent game. They're trying to take a lot of it. It's not anywhere near as violent as it used to be. Well, I'll tell you what, Elaine, 15, 20, 30 years ago, the NFL was much, much worse than it is now when it comes to violence and hard hitting and injuries. It was a man's game back then. That's why a lot of these old-time NFL players now are walking around crippled and die young and have life-threatening injuries and head injuries, because the game back then was really violent. So they've taken a lot of steps now to prevent concussions, to prevent injuries. So I think it's not anywhere near as violent as it used to be, and they're heading in the right direction here.
And what about ice hockey?
As far as the violence goes?
Yeah.
Well, now, they're all wearing helmets now when they didn't used to, and they're wearing face masks, so you don't see a lot of players getting hit in the head with pucks anymore and missing teeth. And as far as the fighting goes, the fans love it. Let's be honest. I'm not a big hockey fan, but the fans like the fighting. The league likes it, and they don't do too much to stop it. So this is one thing that the NHL hierarchy doesn't like to admit, but fighting's a big selling point, because hockey is not a popular sport here in America. It is you've got baseball, football, basketball, then maybe boxing, now MMA, tennis, golf. Hockey is way down. Almost nobody watches hockey, and the ratings are abysmal. So, the fighting is about the only draw when it comes to that sport.
Now, the other couple of questions from Maria are about attracting more families to sports as opposed to teenagers. Here in Australia, I guess a lot of the marketing is aimed at teenagers, kids who are early 20s. It's not kind of family marketing. Is that something that's the same in the USA?
Well, they're getting back to that now. Remember, when I was growing up, it was all about family marketing. You'd go out to a game at Dodger Stadium, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and it was all families. You'd see kids in Little League uniforms, and they'd market to that. Now they got away from that. Dodger Stadium turned into a really, really violent place over the last 10 years. Lots of gang members and lots of kids out there, and there were murders in the parking lot and fights in the stands all the time. And God, I have a friend, Elaine, in Sydney, a good friend of mine, and she came out to visit and stay with me for a while about 2 years ago with her son. And she said, well, her son wanted to go out to see a sporting event, so I took him to a Dodgers game. Oh, my, what a mistake. It was like a Friday night of the fights. So, but it's improved now that Magic Johnson has bought the Dodgers. But, I think there is a trend now toward more family marketing going back to the way it used to be, because they've had a tremendous problem with violence in the stands all over America at these games. And it's because these people get drunk at the games and they start fighting. And there's a lot of problems with gang members as well. So, the solution is, Elaine, what they'll never do, they shouldn't sell alcohol at the game. That would stop a lot of it. But, of course, that affects potential sponsors. And you know how much money these guys make selling beer at the game. So, the bottom line is they'd rather have drunken fans brawling than cut off the beer sales, unfortunately.
Now, Dave, I have another question from James. He says, got to ask him if he thinks the Denver Broncos are going all the way this season. I'm a huge Broncos fan, so that's from James in Washington, one of my good friends. So what do you think about that?
Well, the Broncos aren't very good defensively, but you can, as you've seen, giving up 48 points to Dallas and giving up, 39 to the Colts in their first loss of the season last Sunday night. They got problems in the secondary, but I think the biggest problem and why the Broncos will not win the Super Bowl is their coach, John Fox, whom I have never liked. He's way too conservative, and he tightens up, and he makes mistakes all the time in close games because he coaches scared and he coaches conservative. And one of the mistakes he made last Sunday night, Elaine, he called a timeout in the first 2 minutes of the game when he was lined up to punt, and then he punted anyway, wasted a timeout. He punted on 4th and 1 twice at midfield in the first quarter when you have maybe the greatest quarterback of all time in Peyton Manning back there, and then he screwed up the clock at the end of the half with his clock management. He's just a terrible game. He's a terrible sideline decision maker, and he's a terrible clock manager, and he's way too conservative. And remember last year in the first round of the playoffs, the Broncos looked like they could be a Super Bowl team. First round of the playoffs, they played the Baltimore Ravens. They had them down by 7 with a minute to go in the game, and they had a 4th down and about 2. And instead of going for it and closing the game out, he punted the ball away. The Ravens completed a long pass and wound up winning in overtime. So I think John Fox is the biggest reason that the Denver Broncos will not win the Super Bowl.
Now, I know you're a big fan of pop culture, so you can probably imagine why Homer Simpson doesn't want to own the Denver Broncos.
Imagine the what with the Denver Broncos? I'm sorry, Elaine?
Yeah, I know you're a big pop culture fan, so you can probably imagine, I don't know if you've seen the episode where Homer Simpson gets to own the Denver Broncos.
Oh yeah.
You can see why he doesn't want to own them.
I think he'd be a better coach than John Fox, though.
Oh, jeez. Now, where am I up to? Here we go. Now, we know television has a huge presence in America, but do you think the radio medium gets the amount of respect it deserves?
No, absolutely not. It doesn't get the amount of respect it deserves, and it's much harder to do radio. That's what I tell my friends in TV all the time. I have a lot of friends who do sports on television, and they do these, the sports updates in the local news at night, and, and they say, oh, you have an easy job. Anybody could do what you do. You're just getting in front of the microphone and talk about sports. We do that every night anyway with our buddies out at the bar. And I said, okay. I said, yeah, okay, genius. You do a 5-minute update reading off a teleprompter every night. Let's see you get in front of a microphone for 4 hours and create a show and draw callers and put topics out there. You could never do it. So, yeah, I don't think radio gets anywhere near the respect. I think what we do is very difficult because, it's not about how much you know about sports, and it's not about the statistics or anything. It's about being an entertainer and holding them over and making sure they don't go away during commercial breaks and coming up with great topics every night and putting good guests together. So you've got to do it 4 hours a day. So it's a tough job.
Now, have you ever delved into television?
Yes. I've done, I used to do a TV show out here, and I got my start doing public access television, which is, public television where you don't get paid, and you're doing a half-an-hour show once a week. So that was the first thing I did. And I do guest spots all the time, and, God, I go on, you get Fox News Channel down under?
Yes, if we pay for cable, but it's pretty expensive.
So I'm on there, like, whenever they do a sports topic, they bring me on to do a quick hit on Fox News Channel as well. So, yeah, I do some TV still.
What do you prefer? I like asking this question to people who have tried both radio and television. What do you prefer and why? Because they are completely different.
Oh, radio, without question. Radio is the theater of the mind. I mean, you close your eyes and listen to the radio, and you can walk around the house, and you can hear it, and you can be in your car, and you can hear it. You don't have to be glued to the television set. And you're talking to a guy that's all I've ever wanted to do. I used to take a transistor radio to bed with me at night when I was a kid. When my mom and dad thought I was in bed asleep, and I'd sneak my transistor radio in, and I'd go under the covers all the way so they couldn't, and turn it down low and press it up against my ear. And I'd stay up all night listening to radio. That's all I've ever wanted to do. I was a radio freak from the time I was a kid.
Were you listening to sports radio or just any kind of radio?
All radio. I'd listen to, like, the great announcers, Vin Scully with the Dodgers and Chick Hearn, announcing the Laker games. And then I'd listen to the talk shows at night, the overnight talk shows. And, I listened to all of it. I listened to political talk and music and sports talk and games. And I was just fascinated by radio. I always have been. Now,
I want to get your opinion on a couple of different parts of sport. First bit I want to touch on is loyalty in sport. As you know, I'm a big basketball fan. And I think the major sign for me that loyalty in sport has finally died was Paul Pierce, who was a 17-year player for the Boston Celtics. They pretty much threw him to Brooklyn to try and clear out the team. Now, do you think there is any loyalty left in sport? I think that was really sad that they just throw out Paul Pierce, who's been such a good player for them for so many years.
Yeah. But it was the right thing to do. I mean, you can talk about loyalty, but Paul Pierce got reached beyond his wildest dreams, and the Celtics benefited by getting a great player all those years. So sometimes it's just it's nice to shake hands and say it's been great, and now it's time to part ways, because the Celtics were getting old. Elaine, Paul Pierce old, Kevin Garnett old, Ray Allen old. So they weren't going to win any more championships. So it's time to blow it up and rebuild. So they have Rajon Rondo, who's one of the best point guards in the league. So then they unloaded KG and Paul Pierce on the Nets and let Ray Allen go to the Miami Heat. So now they got first-round draft picks now. They've got all kinds of cap space coming up after next year. So I think they're doing it the right way. So, loyalty, I guess, in a perfect world, it would be nice to keep guys around throughout their careers. But, how long do you keep guys like, Pierce and Ray Allen and Garnett around if you're not winning and they're making $15, $20 million a year and they're getting old? Time to blow it up and time to start over.
What are the positives of having free agency in America? I mean, it gets pretty complicated whether you're unrestricted or restricted, and there's all these other kinds of all these other kind of tidbits. That's the right term. But what are the positives you see in having free agency and giving the players freedom of choice?
Well, I think it's great to have freedom, because back in the old days they had something called a reserve clause, where you were once you signed with a team, you were obligated to them for the rest of your career unless they traded you. So free agency is a good thing, giving the players freedom, and it raised the salaries tremendously. And you mentioned in the NBA, it's difficult to leave as a free agent and go from one team to another, because they've got the rules rigged where they have something called the Larry Bird rule, which is you can go over the salary cap. In the NBA, every team has a salary cap right now. It's $58.5 million. That's the limit that you can spend on your players. But if you re-sign your own free agent, you can go as far over the cap as you want. So that rule was put in to encourage players to stay with their own team. So if you leave a team as a free agent to go to a different team, you almost always have to take less money. LeBron took less to go from Cleveland to Miami. So, and Dwayne Wade took a pay cut when LeBron came in. Ray Allen took a pay cut. Chris Bosh took less money to go as a free agent from Toronto to Miami because they wanted to win. So if you're a free agent and leave from one team to another, you're going to have to take less money. And but you do have the freedom to pick and choose which team you want to go to. Now, saying less money is all relative, right? If you go from $18 million to $15 million, you're not going to throw any benefits for them.
Now, yeah, you bring up. Well, you're leading into my next questions really well here, so we're working well together. Now, another issue that's starting to show its head in Australian sport is the amount of money that athletes are getting paid. I don't know if you heard about the Buddy Franklin contract of $10 million over the next 9 years. He signed with the Sydney Swans. Do you think athletes are getting paid too much money, especially the young ones just starting out their careers?
No, I don't think they're. I think you're paid what you are paid what you're worth. If the owners couldn't afford to sign these guys, they wouldn't do it. I've often said, I think when Michael Jordan was making $30 million a year with the Chicago Bulls, he was the most underpaid player in the history of sports, because when you consider what he brought in, the sales of the luxury suites in Chicago, the sales of the premium seats, the number 23 jerseys, the bobblehead dolls, the marketing, he probably brought in $200 to $300 million a year just with his name. So $30 million is nothing. No, I don't think athletes. I think a lot of these guys are underpaid for what they bring into the franchise and the value of the franchise that goes up as well. And I never begrudge a guy for making money. More power to him. If they're not making it, the owners are. And if the owners couldn't afford it, they wouldn't be paying it.
And another issue that has gradually over the years started to escalate in sport is drug use. Now, we've had a big inquest into the AFL recently into drug use. How do you think any sport could rid itself of illegal substances? Is it possible to do?
I think it's impossible to completely rid yourself, because I think these players and the doctors are always one step ahead of the testers, and there's still a lot of guys in American sports taking steroids and performance-enhancing drugs and getting away with it. So I don't think you'll ever get rid of it, but it's not as bad as it used to be 10 or 15 years ago, and they've cut down on it somewhat. They haven't been testing for HGH in most sports. They don't have a reliable test for HGH yet, and a lot of the players' unions object to having blood tests, which is what it takes to detect HGH. They just want the urine testing. So you'll never get rid of it completely, but it's better than it was.
And now, we know in America, well, something you said before surprised me. You've got what I thought were the four big sports of basketball, football, baseball, and ice hockey. You said ice hockey isn't such a big sport anymore.
Oh, no.
Does sports like Major League Soccer, NASCAR, you said boxing, and any of the other sports leagues you have, do they get much publicity? How do you share the love, I guess, over so many different sports that you have the choice of in America?
Yeah, you mentioned NASCAR. I forgot that. That is huge. When you look at the TV ratings, NASCAR is second pretty much to NFL football sometimes. Now, it's regional, Elaine. It's gigantic in the South, in the South of the United States, like Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Texas. It is religion there, NASCAR, which is where most of the ratings come from. But it's starting to expand. It's getting popular all over America now. Here in L.A., there's 150, 200,000 seat track out in Fontana where they won the California 500 every year, and they sell it out. So, yeah, NASCAR is a very popular sport. As far as the other ones, soccer, nobody cares about soccer. It is, we are, I think, we are the lone country in the world that doesn't care about soccer. Nobody watches, it gets no ratings, and almost nobody cares about soccer here. It's the number one sport in the world, but for some reason, Elaine, and I think probably it's because we have the other sports that are so popular. There's so much other stuff to choose from, but soccer is a zero when it comes to ratings here in the States.
So how does the Major League survive? How does Major League Soccer survive?
Well, they've got a nice little stadium out here at the Home Depot Center in Carson, a suburb of Los Angeles. It seats about 25,000 people, and the Galaxy sells out every game they play. So and they get a lot of money. The television gave them a contract, and they get some money there, and they have a lot of rich owners who are willing to lose some money long-term, hoping that this league will survive. So, there's a hardcore, small group of soccer fans that can fill up a 25,000 seat stadium every week, and in their little niche, they're doing okay, but as far as broad-based popularity, it's almost zero. Same with hockey. Hockey can't even get a major network contract in America, and the ratings are almost, not quite as bad as the WNBA, but they're down there. Almost nobody watches hockey. But, again, if you watch a hockey game on television, you see sold-out arenas, and that gives you the impression, well, hockey's a popular sport. But it's really not. It's the hardcore, small group of fans that go to every game, and they give you the impression there's a lot more of them than there really are.
So even post-David Beckham, soccer still isn't pushing as hard as it should be in America?
No, and it never will, because it's football, it's basketball, it's baseball, and you turn on a soccer game, and almost all the games are nothing, and you know what? You're talking to kind of a novice here, Elaine. Maybe you could explain this to me. I think the offside rule just kills soccer when it comes to America. In football, if you let your man get behind you, it's a touchdown. In basketball, if you let your man get behind you, it's a slam dunk, and it's an exciting play. In soccer, if you let your man get behind you, they blow the whistle and stop the action, and it's a good play for the defense. I've never understood that.
Yeah, in basketball, it's almost an automatic tech foul sometimes.
Yeah, and it's just every time there's any action in soccer, somebody makes a good play, somebody makes a nice pass, and it looks like there's going to be a score, the referee's blowing his whistle and calling offside. Get back on defense if you don't want your man to get back behind you, right? And you're talking to a guy who's kind of a novice here when it comes to soccer, but I think they need to really liberalize that offside rule.
Now, we've got 8 minutes left in the show, so let's get through these last couple of questions really quickly. The NBA season is on the verge of kicking off. Can you give us some of your tips and players to watch, some of the tips of the main awards and the players to watch, and who you think will win the main awards?
Well, I don't think Miami's going to get out of the East this year. I think they're getting a little bit old, and I think Ray Allen, his knees are shot, and they were lucky to win last year. They should have lost to San Antonio in the finals, but they had them down, 5 or 6 points in the last minute of a close. San Antonio should be the NBA champion right now, so I don't think Miami's going to get out of the East this year. I think the Chicago Bulls are going to be the team to watch here. Derrick Rose, who was the MVP 2 years ago, and didn't play last year because of that knee injury. He's back, and he's looking great in the preseason. So
there's too much pressure on him. There's too much pressure on him. He hasn't played in a year and a half. How is there so much pressure on Derrick Rose?
Well, he's just a great player, and I think he's hungry, and I think he's missed here, and he's looked sensational in the preseason here. And they have Joakim Noah, they have Carlos Boozer, they have Long Deng. They have a really good team and a good coach in Tom Thibodeau. I think they come out of the East, and when it comes to the West, I like San Antonio again. I know it's easy to count them out because they're getting old, but I think we're going to see San Antonio and Chicago in the finals. But you talk about a rising star, Kyrie Irving, the kid that you mentioned before, born in Melbourne, and who the Boomers tried to get to play on the Australian Olympic team in London in 2012. He is what a superstar he's turning out to be. He's going to be, I think, a guy this year, and he might be the reason. There's talk, LeBron's a free agent. He might go back to Cleveland, where he started. And Kyrie Irving might be the reason that LeBron wants to play with such a superstar young kid.
Geez, that would start a brawl in Cleveland. I don't think they'd want it. Well, obviously they would want him back, but it's going to play with their emotions.
He's from Cleveland, Elaine, and I don't think LeBron wants to be hated for the rest of his life in his hometown. So I think he'd like to pass him out of bridges and win a championship. And he could. If LeBron went back to the Cavaliers with that young team they've assembled with Kyrie Irving, they'd be a favorite to win the championship. And so he's either going to stay in Miami, go to Cleveland, or come to the Lakers with L.A. Those would be 3 options after this year for LeBron.
Now, one of my favourite players, as you know, is Jared Dudley. He got traded from my team, the Phoenix Suns. Do you think he will have much of an impact at the Clippers? Role player. He'll probably play 10 to 15 minutes a game and knock down. At this point of his career, he's pretty much a three-point shooter and a role player. So, I don't think he'll have a lot of impact with the Clippers because, they're a team. The Clippers could win the championship this year. They are stacked. They are really good. The only thing holding them back was Vinny Del Negro, their coach, and now Doc Rivers, the great coach from the Celtics, who won a championship, is now the Clippers coach. So I think you're going to see a much better Blake Griffin, you're going to see a much better DeAndre Jordan, and you're going to see this Clipper team possibly win a championship this year. Now, and what do you think about our Aussies? Andrew Bogut has just signed a new 3-year contract with Golden State Warriors, and obviously also Patty Mills. Do you think Patty Mills will get some more game time?
As long as Tony Parker there, and Tony Parker is one of the best point guards in the NBA. Patty's going to be a backup player, maybe 5 to 10 minutes a game with the San Antonio Spurs. So, no, I don't think Patty will get a lot more playing time. Hopefully, he'll be the backup there in San Antonio. Andrew Bogut's a really good player. He's a defensive player of the year a couple of years ago. Led the NBA in blocks. His problem, he can't stay healthy. The guy's always hurt. And last year, remember Golden State made that nice run in the playoffs last year, and it was mainly because Stephen Curry's a great player, Klay Thompson, but they finally had the big man, which they haven't had, in Andrew Bogut. And he was really good in the playoffs last year. So if he can stay healthy, he's one of the best centers in the NBA. So, yeah, but it's all about, there's no question about his skill. There's no question about anything except his health. He's always hurt.
Now, before we get on to the last question, I just want to ask you, it's a bit of a selfish question. What do you think about my Phoenix Suns? Do we have any hope?
No, not very good. I hate to say that, Wayne, but, I'm a Lakers fan, and they aren't any good either. That's hard for me to say. The Lakers aren't any good as well, because I don't think Kobe is going to be ready come opening night, coming off that Achilles injury. Yeah, but the Suns are a mess right now. Robert Sarver, the owner there in Phoenix, is cheap, and there's lottery. But the good news is it's the best draft in years, so the Suns will get a really good player coming out of this draft.
Here we go. Do you think the Lakers will make the playoffs?
No.
No?
Because I don't think Kobe's hit. Now, I'm in the minority here in Los Angeles. I like Mike D'Antoni. You know him, being a Phoenix Suns fan. I thought he did a great job with the Suns.
He was fantastic with Phoenix.
Oh, I think D'Antoni's, when they had Steve Nash and Joe Johnson and Amari Stoudemire and
Sean Marion.
Oh, I think D'Antoni's a good coach. He just doesn't have the right pieces here in L.A. But, he didn't have a training camp last year, and he inherited a team that was coached by somebody else. So if Kobe is healthy and ready to go on opening night and 100%, yes, I think they're a playoff team. But I don't think he's going to be ready to go on opening night, so I don't think they'll make the playoffs. And I think it's not going to be fair, but Mike D'Antoni is going to get fired, and they're going to bring back Phil Jackson to coach the team next year.
Now, also before we ask you the last question, you are a fan of pop culture. Who do you think is going to get killed off in The Simpsons? I wanted to ask you that.
Oh, boy. Boy, not Homer, not Marge, not Maggie, not Bart. I'll go with Moe, the owner of the tavern.
Oh, they're saying it's Apu, but they're such influential characters. Why can't it be like Hans Moleman or something? A character you don't need.
Well, you might be right.
Now, finally, where can people find you? Twitter, Facebook, website? Go, give yourself a bit of a plug. You've been great today.
NBC Sports Radio, which is a national network I'm doing a show for now. You can find me there at NBCSportsRadio.com. TheSportsGod.com is my website, where I write a column about 3 times a week and have all kinds of, plays. If you're interested in playing on the NFL and the NBA and baseball and stuff. And then also my Twitter handle is at Dave, D-A-V-E, SportsGod, at Dave SportsGod. That's where you and I communicate all the time, Elaine.
Yeah, that's how I got onto you, started stalking you, and you've been pretty nice to me.
Well, yeah, I met another guy from Australia who's a fellow radio talk show host of yours, and I do some work for that station as well, and I met him. He was a listener of mine listening on the internet, so it's funny how that works.
Now, Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've been great. Great quality for the last hour, and maybe we can have another chat later on in the NBA season. It's been a pleasure.
I'm ready, and hopefully I can get down there. I've never been down under to Australia before. It's always been a dream of mine. So
you should come in live.
Come down there for a visit.
You could come in. You could come in live.
Yeah, and remember, you're buying when I come down there.
Oh yeah, I'll take you out for dinner. Sure, why not?
All right.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's been great.
All right, thanks.